Have you ever felt the unpleasant sensation of being envied by someone? And how many times have you wondered how to understand exactly if someone feels envious of you? In a world where human relationships are full of complexities and nuances of all kinds, it is easy to find ourselves faced with feelings of envy, which can affect our emotional balance. But what if we could clearly recognize these negative emotions in others and learn to defend ourselves from them? In this video, thanks to a Zen story, we will discover the 8 typical phrases that envious people use when they talk to us. This will allow us to better understand who is truly sincere and who could hide envy behind a smile. So, if you want to know exactly how to identify people who envy you, so as to protect your mental well-being and inner peace, stay with us until the end. But first, if you are not yet one of us, subscribe to the channel and activate notifications so that you are informed when we publish new content for your spiritual growth. The Buddhist monk Kiza, famous for his profound wisdom and ability to act as a spiritual guide to his disciples, lives in a remote monastery hidden in the Himalayan mountains. One day, as dawn illuminated the mountain peaks, a group of disciples who had come from far away gathered for one of the most awaited lessons, the one on envy. Kiza welcomed them with a serene smile, and after looking each of them in the eyes as a sign of welcome, he sat down calmly and began his lesson. "Dear friends," he said calmly, "envy is a dark feeling that can generate profound suffering both in those who feel it and in those who are the object of it. But to face it, we must first learn to recognize it. There are clear signs that tell us when someone is envious of us," he continued, "which we often don't pay attention to because we are too in good faith to see the evil behind every behavior. Today, I want to share with you 8 phrases to pay particular attention to. 8 phrases that, in the vast majority of cases, indicate that a person has envy and negative feelings for you. The first phrase to keep in mind is, "I don't understand why you always have to have everything," Kiza said with a piercing gaze directed towards the horizon. When you hear this phrase pronounced by an acquaintance or a relative, know that it is like a cold whistle of wind in the mountains, carrying a shadow of envy that creeps into the soul of the person who pronounces it. It is an involuntary recognition of the success of others, accompanied by a touch of bitterness for one's own misfortune. Therefore, whether it is said voluntarily or not, it is evidence of a negative feeling. Imagine having a friend with whom you share your successes and joys. One day, you talk excitedly about a goal you have achieved, such as finally buying the house of your dreams. And your friend's response might be something like this: "Well, that's great for you, but I don't understand why you always have to have everything so easily. Many others struggle to achieve even a fraction of what you have." The disciples nodded and looked at each other. Everyone's thoughts began to fly, bringing with them memories of situations where someone had used those words on them. The second phrase to remember is, "You must be very lucky to be so successful," the monk said in a delicate tone of voice. This phrase is like a bird's song at dawn, sweet but full of bitterness, he continued, because it implies that the success of others is the result of chance or luck, rather than of the person's merit and commitment. The people present at the lesson, even when faced with this phrase, nodded and began to reflect, marveling at how many times they had heard it said to someone. The third sentence you need to pay attention to is the following: "I would never do certain things to get what you have," Kiza continued with a voice as warm and enveloping as the warmth of the sun filtering through the branches of the trees. Trees. This phrase is like a shadow that envelops the light, because it brings with it a false admiration that hides a strong feeling of envy. The person who utters such a sentence makes it clear that he does not appreciate the way in which the other has obtained certain results and privileges. In reality, this hides the strong desire to possess precisely what the other has obtained. While, thanks to the words of their mentor, the disciples increasingly understood how to recognize those moved by envy and resentment, Kiza moved on to another phrase to watch out for. It seems that life is always smiling at you. This phrase is like an echo in the mountains, a whisper of envy disguised as a compliment. It essentially implies that the envied person is immune to the adversities of life, ignoring his internal battles and the sacrifices he has made to achieve what he has. Imagine being at work and having a colleague who, at every opportunity, says something like this: "Wow, you're always so lucky. Looking at your life, everything seems to be going your way. I wish I had yours too. Fortune." This phrase could be uttered with a false smile, but behind it there is almost certainly a feeling of envy. Your colleague may feel inadequate compared to you and express this feeling through a compliment that sounds more like a reproach. The fifth phrase to remember is, "I don't think you deserve everything you have," Kiza said with a gaze as deep as a lake of crystal clear water. This sentence is like a poisoned arrow shot with precision towards the heart of the envied person. These are not, as in other cases, words that need to be interpreted. They go straight to the point. And they imply a negative judgment on the value and merit of your achievements, fueling the fire of envy with the fuel of denigration. The faces of the disciples became gloomy as they thought of the various times in which they had found themselves enduring such scathing and hateful phrases. The sixth sentence Kiza spoke about was, "You must have some kind of special support to always get what you want." This phrase is like a suspicion that creeps into the soul, a shadow of envy that makes its way through your thoughts. It implies that other people's success is the result of favoritism or connivance, rather than the person's talent and commitment, and it is one of the least nice and most hateful phrases you can hear. Imagine that you have been promoted at work after achieving a major success in your career. A coworker might approach you and say something like this: "Look, I don't want to sound suspicious, but I'm wondering if you have any kind of special support. It's amazing how you always manage to get what you want." This phrase might be uttered with a certain tinge of doubt or suspicion, suggesting that your success is not due to your commitment and competence, but to acquaintances, favoritism, or privileged connections. The seventh phrase to keep in mind is, "It's not fair that you always have everyone's attention," Kiza said. This phrase is like a groan of resentment, a sigh of envy that creeps in between lines. It implies a sense of injustice for the attention and recognition received from the envied person, fueling the fire of envy with the dry wood of jealousy. Imagine attending a party with friends and family. During the evening, an acquaintance approaches you and says something like this: "I must say that you are always the center of attention. It is not fair that you always receive so many compliments and attention from everyone." This phrase could be said with a hint of envy or jealousy, suggesting that the acquaintance feels neglected or overshadowed by you during the event. Evidently, this person feels ignored and has the impression of being worth less than you or of being put aside precisely because of your greater charisma. The disciples, once again, found themselves in full harmony with the monk's words. Each of them remembered the many occasions in which they had lived experiences like those described. Another phrase you should pay attention to is, "If only I had your resources, I too could do great things." Kiza continued in his voice as calm as the stillness of a starry night. This phrase is like a sigh of regret, a subdued lament that rises from the depths. It implies that the success of others is the result of favorable circumstances or privileged resources, rather than of a person's courage and determination. Imagine being in a social situation, perhaps having dinner with friends, and sharing a personal success. such as learning to play a musical instrument or completing a marathon. At this point, one of the people present might react by saying something like this: "Yes, it's true, you're really good, but imagine what I could do if I had your financial resources or your free time to dedicate myself to those activities." This phrase, uttered with a hint of envy and a sense of regret and frustration towards one's personal limitations, serves to insinuate that you have had advantages or resources that they, unfairly, would not have had. Remember, Kiza added with a bright smile, that defending yourself from envy requires awareness and compassion. Always maintain your authenticity and don't let yourself be influenced by the words of others, continuing to pursue your path with determination and gratitude.